What's up, everyone? Really excited for our next installment of our Thrive Through Connection podcast. This one's really exciting to me to bring on Evan, the CEO and founder of Getro. I think it's very rare that you meet another founder building software for the venture and startup space. And that's how Evan and I originally got connected and have since built our own relationship since then. And our whole theme this year around thrive through connection and how relationships are going to matter more than ever in the advent of where we are in the AI cycle is something I think we both share a fondness for. So Evan, thanks for joining, and I would love just to have you kind of give a quick intro about yourself and about Getro.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I live in Brooklyn these days and have lived in many places all over the world. I've been an entrepreneur for probably about 15 years. My first company, unless you count garage sales, was a recruiting agency that focused on helping social impact companies with hiring and did that for about 5 years. And then started Getro right around 2017. We launched our first product. And today we mostly work with venture capital funds and private equity funds, and we help them make better introductions for their portfolio companies. So we have kind of a suite of tools, including a job board platform that brings in all the open jobs from the portfolio of companies, and also what we call a network management platform that helps VCs organize their contacts and make better introductions in lots of different circumstances.
Very cool. You mentioned that you had a different role as an entrepreneur before. I mean, before you started Getro, which serves community and relationships and platform teams. What did the community and connection mean to you before you even started and set out to build Getro?
Yeah, Getro in a way was inspired by the things that I was already doing every day manually. I was really passionate about making connections for people. I just saw how catalytic it could be and just I think it makes me feel good when I can introduce two people that end up doing something together or that solves a problem. So I was always fascinated by that. As a recruiting organization, my first company, we started noticing that a lot of the folks that we were sourcing talent from were actually small professional networks and communities, and they were typically being managed on Facebook or the tools at that time were pretty bad, but we were noticing that they were making introductions to us for great candidates who were their members, and those folks were looking for jobs, and so it was very kind of word of mouth introduction based of how we were finding the best folks. And we had built our own community of people who were coming to us and saying, "Hey, I'm really interested in working in this area of social impact. Very hard to find companies that are vetted and interesting. If you ever find something for me, let me know." So that was kind of part of the basis of the business. And we were just growing through that mechanism, and that was really interesting to me. So that was a big part of the inspiration for Getro. But I also participated in lots of different professional networks myself. We started a kind of a co-living entrepreneurship community in Boulder. Maybe you'd call it a hacker house now, but we didn't know what we were doing at that time. It's maybe an early hacker house, hippie house, hippie hacker house, and a couple other just professional groups where people were helping each other, and it just started to become second nature to me to be thinking about the world this way.
You mentioned Boulder. You were part of Techstars Boulder, which I think, or not think, no, like the big mentality of Techstars has been give first and really part of the
Yeah.
community. So like, how did that experience when you went through Techstars, how did that reshape? Did that reshape anything about community and access or strengthen or embolden some of your views there?
Yeah, Techstars was the theme of Techstars for me was community and network. When we were applying to get in, we knew some people who were part of the program, but not really. Like we weren't, I had lived in Boulder, so I had a network in Boulder of people who knew the managing director and the team, but we were just starting the business. We didn't really have any traction. And so we were trying to get recommendations. So I basically just reached out to everybody I knew who had a relationship with the team and asked them if they could make a referral. And ultimately, when we got in, the team had said we were the applicants with the most referrals that they had ever seen in the history of the program, at least in Boulder. And so I think that spoke to just building so much goodwill in town and having people reflect that back to the program. It helped them build their conviction in us when our business wasn't really off the ground yet. So that was super helpful. And then going through the program, we met with tons of mentors, and that's a big part of the DNA of Techstars in general. Is just it's a very mentor-driven program. So we met lots of mentors who wanted to help us and offered introductions. And when we ended up graduating the program, we reached back out to a lot of those folks and asked them for introductions to people who became our first set of customers.
Mm.
So it was really like a warm intro sales strategy when we first graduated the program. And I think our first 30 customers came from warm introductions from people we had met during the program. So Techstars, their motto is give first. They really try to bake it into everything they do. They try to build this philosophy around when you're out there giving, you're building positive momentum in your relationships, you're building goodwill, you're staying top of mind, and you're solving people's problems. And so they're going to be framed positively when they think about you. They're going to be wanting to reciprocate that value and give back as well. And it just creates this kind of positive vortex, especially when a whole community is thinking like that. And there's so much gravity for Techstars as a community and network in Boulder, and you could really feel it when we were there.
Yeah. Is there a specific moment or conversation that kind of changed and made you have like that aha moment of like it sounds like the referrals help get in and customer introductions, but there's like a specific moment you're like, whoa, uh, my network's really powerful now.
Yeah, I think actually the moment was when we were going through the program. We had built this job scraping technology, and we hadn't really built any job boards yet for venture funds. And I was talking to a friend of mine at the time named Micah, who was working at Foundry Group,
Hmm.
and they decided to build a job board with our software because they had a different solution. It was like broken on the website. And we are like, hey, this page is broken anyway. Can we use our software? And so they did. And Brad Feld, who's one of the partners of Foundry Group, posted on his blog about the job board. And it wasn't even really an endorsement. It was more just like, hey, we did this thing. But from that post, there was probably 5 or 6 funds who reached out to us and said, "Hey, I saw what Brad posted. I really trust Brad. Can you guys build one of these for us?" And that was a huge momentum builder for us. So just to see Brad, the example of Brad just being able to make a tiny post like that and get so much traction for a new startup, I think that was inspiring to me to just be like, wow, this is a really powerful. I mean, this network is powerful. Brad's a powerful guy, but just seeing that play out was kind of like a microcosm of what I felt like Techstars had built.
Is that how you got like your initial traction and product market fit? Was that like proof point of like, hey, we
Yeah.
built this job scraper and now it's this thing for venture job boards?
Yeah, 100%. We were intending originally to build a talent marketplace, and we decided that, as you're trying to break the chicken and egg of any kind of marketplace, you have supply and demand, and we're like, well, companies aren't going to pay us if we don't have candidates. But if companies aren't posting jobs, then candidates aren't going to come to the platform. So what do you solve first? And the idea was to build job scraping technology where we could go get all of the jobs from the companies, have them all the best jobs on a website. Candidates start to use that, and then we could kind of go to the companies and say, "Hey, look, we're driving all this traffic to your jobs. Maybe you want to pay us, and we can promote them, or we can do screening or something like that." So we had that technology, and the investors were kind of like, hey, this is really interesting. We have 100 portfolio companies. We don't really know which roles they're hiring for, and we want to help them, but we're kind of blind to the problem right now.
Yeah.
Or they were doing it manually with spreadsheets, and analysts were like going to career pages and manually typing things into a job board. So it was just an easy win, and that ended up kind of getting momentum.
I love that. So you've gone through that. You were a founder before Getro. What's something maybe that you believed as a first time founder, but now you've had 8 years doing this in the capacity of Getro alone, 15 years as a founder. What's like something
Hmm.
you see totally different than you did when you first got started?
Yeah, I think when I first got started, and even in my first company, we didn't really have a network. We had raised a little bit of money, but it was from angel investors. And I think the holy grail for me was raise venture capital. It's like if I raise venture capital, then that's like you're on a success path. And even with Getro, we bootstrapped the company for a few years, and then ultimately we did end up raising some venture capital. Um, and I think. I think at that time it almost felt binary to me. Like you either are a successful company that raises VC money or you're not. And I think now after having run the business longer and also just having a big network of other founders who, we talk about different things, and I just see a much broader landscape of financing strategies around different kinds of projects that are able to serve the type of project that you're working on, as opposed to just the binary of like we succeeded in raising a bunch of money or not. And I think that's becoming even more true as things get cheaper to build with AI. It's easier to validate your ideas, and if you have something that requires an immediate subsidization essentially with capital, then it makes sense to do that. And if not, you can hold off longer or maybe not raise at all. So more flexibility there comes to mind. And then another one is I think when we first started the company, we had this like big vision of the different steps that we were going to take, and like we're going to build this for these people, and then down the road build this for these people. It's like this kind of multi-stage vision. And I think in retrospect, it's beautiful to have a big vision, and actually it's really important to motivate your team. But I think I probably overestimated what was possible for us to do in a short amount of time, and just the ability to just focus on one thing and say, we're going to build this thing for this customer and we're going to grow that. And if we find other opportunities from our customers later, then we'll take advantage of those. But trying to build multiple products or for multiple markets at the same time when you're a small team, even if the opportunity is there, even if people are excited about it, and even if they're paying you money, it is quite difficult. And especially, I think, as a first-time founder, I just wasn't as capable at executing that as probably even probably I would be today, or maybe someone who'd done it before would be. So it's not like it's an objectively bad idea. It was just with my
Yeah.
capabilities at the time, I don't think that I was set up well for that, and it created a lot of frustration among the team, at different times.
In the sense of like, I have this huge big idea, but my reality is today and getting this thing done, and I can't, as a team member, I'm like, that's so far away. I can't even think about that, or like, where did the disconnect happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's partly that. Like it's partly like if you're talking about a vision over here, but the thing you're doing today doesn't look anything like the vision, it can be a disconnect. I mean, if you're kind of a founder mindset and you're able to live in both worlds at the same time and you're really seeing in your head what it's going to be, you can kind of stomach that, I think.
Mhm.
But for team members who are coming on board who want maybe a more practical, direct connection to either like the vision or the mission of the company, you have to be able as a founder to tell a story all along the way. Like you have to tell a story today about why what we're doing today is really meaningful and matters, and what we're about to accomplish is really meaningful and matters. And if all that works, then down the road, this is really meaningful and this matters. And you have to kind of have a clear story for each of those pieces. Otherwise, I think it just ends up having to bias for a specific type of person. And as a company, as you're growing, you need people of kind of varying degrees of risk profile, varying degrees of abstract or visionary thinking. And so there are times when it's like, yeah, we're all talking about the vision, but we might have someone like in an ops role, for example, is like, okay, but like today though, what are we doing today? So you kind of you need to sit across the whole spectrum.
I feel
And
like
then,
that.
I mean, the other
Go
the
ahead.
other part I was going to say is just about sequencing of what you're working on and
Mm.
prioritization. So if you have three different types of customers who you think want the same thing, it takes a lot of validation to make sure that that's actually the case. And what I notice is that usually maybe a certain percentage of the problem is the same, and the solution that they use to solve that problem is mostly the same. But as you get into the weeds of it, it starts to kind of take off in different directions, and it's hard to support multiple customer personas with multiple solutions as a small company. So just to be very careful about that, I think.
How has that gotten any more fine tuned, or how have you fine tuned that, today versus early on? Like, is there a framework? Is it like we only listen to paying
Yeah.
customers? Like, that's one thing I always struggle with is like, how do we weight the different points of feedback, right? There's like, what do
Yeah.
we want to become as a business? Where are our prospects pulling us? Where are our current customers pulling us? Like, ideally, that's one concentric circle, but usually it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Totally. I
how
mean,
have you navigated that?
yeah, there's some like kind of tactical principle level things. Like one thing that comes to mind is around, so I'd say like one is around customer support, one's around product development, one's around sales. With customer support, if you have a customer that you know is not in the revenue focus kind of swim lane, but they're using the product. You just have to be thoughtful about how much your time you're spending and what expectations you're setting with that customer. So if our product, for example, is focused on serving venture capital funds and private equity funds, we have a couple of our customers who are recruiters. It's like a recruiting agency, right? And so for them, it's like if they're asking us for lots of different features, we don't really have a clear point of view around, how our products are going to go scale to work with thousands of recruiters. And so we just need to be clear with that customer that, hey, we would love to give you the opportunity to use our product, but the request that you have might be taking us in a different direction than where our business is going to go. So you just need to know that. And it's okay if you don't want to use the product anymore. We totally get that. We just all need to be clear about that. And I think like early on, it was more like if we see a big revenue opportunity, maybe we would go support that customer, or maybe we wouldn't have the discipline, right? So that's on the customer success. On product development, kind of the same thing. Like there were times where we would have product requests from people who are paying you money. So the intuition is like, all right, this customer wants to pay me more money if we build this thing. Let's go build the thing. But then you can end up having almost like a, kind of hydra of well, the product going in different directions, and it just gets hard to support for the engineering team. And so then that creates debt that needs to be cleaned up. Things move slower, right? And then I think for a sales perspective, um, learning about, for example, creating like a design partnership where you go into a company and say, hey, we'd love to help you solve this problem. First, let's sit down and do like a kind of forensic analysis of what is the problem, how are you solving it today, what are your alternative best paths, how much of a budget are you spending trying to solve this problem, and if the problem was solved, how would you know that? How would you measure that? What kind of KPIs do you use? From there, maybe designing a program where you're saying, we're going to build the solution for you, sign a contract now. And, there's different ways to do it. You could take the revenue up front, you could take partial revenue and have them pay the rest once the first version is delivered. You could take no revenue, but once the version's delivered, then they pay. But some kind of skin in the game, revenue wise, so that they're going to be engaged. And ideally, there's like a little bit of pain involved on both sides, so that they're paying attention to it. Otherwise, I think, yeah, you get people who have good ideas, but they're not product developers, right? They don't understand how to build a scalable software solution. They just want their problem solved, and they've been thinking about it, and they're going to give you whatever they think off the top of their head.
What model has worked best for you for design partnerships? I've never gotten it to work, so that's why I'm asking. I'm just curious. Like,
I
is
mean,
it like
honestly,
the? I
man,
feel like it's like pay up front. Let's figure this out together, or what's worked well.
it's really hard. I think as a startup, it's really hard. We've tried different kinds of models. Most of them have not worked. Some of them have worked. I think as we've gotten bigger and have developed more of a reputation, I've noticed that it's actually easier to get people to commit to things that aren't built yet, probably because they just trust us more to
Hmm.
actually deliver it, or they have, some other basis to say, okay, you guys did this, so you could probably do that. Um, at the beginning, though, I do think that it's possible to close these kinds of arrangements. You just have to find someone who has a deep enough pain point that they're willing to take a risk, right? And that there really isn't another alternative. And they're just either doing a ton of work manually, they're spending a ton of money trying to solve the problem, and they're willing to make a bet on you. So digging if the answer is no, then my nudge would be like try to find where more of that pain is. It might be
Hmm.
in a different place in the organization. It might be with a different industry of a similar type of buyer. And then the second part is just social proof, like going in with as much as you can get. Like, where did your employees work in the past? Who are your investors? Any success at all in your career, basically, you're just trying to convince somebody that, like, when I say I'm going to do a thing, I do a thing, and here's some evidence of that. So if you can get over those two humps, then I think it is more likely to work.
I love it. Well, thanks for sharing I think the journey and the early days to where you are now is always fascinating for founders to
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
and process. But I kind of love to shift to what brought us here today, which is kind of network and relationships. And I think Evan, what you're an expert at is um, cultivating that network and using it truly as an asset. Um, so maybe just to kick things off, like how do you think AI? We could probably spend a ton of time here, but just like uh, how we got here too is like how do you think AI is going to impact the importance of relationships in your network um, in the startup world, and then maybe more specifically, like when it comes to raising capital or finding key hires.
Yeah. Well, I guess a couple of things. One is that I do think that we are arriving into a future where there's um, a lot more content. It's hard to tell if that content is actually being generated by a human or not. In some cases, it probably doesn't matter if it gives you the answer that you need. In some cases, it does matter, especially if someone is trying to manipulate you by pretending to be someone or something they're not. So the idea of what is true is changing. Um, and so in that kind of a world, I think we will probably rely on the people that we trust as just a natural human inclination. And maybe that actually changes over time once we learn to trust AI more. But I think probably in the next, 2 to 5 years, let's say, and it's like who knows the actual timeline there. But in this next chapter, I do think that we will be naturally leaning more on human beings who we know they care about us. We know that their motivations are aligned to our well-being. And so that's, I think, how people are still making a lot of the biggest decisions in their lives. So that's one piece of it. And I think another piece is we'll be able to use AI to help us find things a lot more efficiently. So imagining, a future where we have and Getro's kind of building this, you guys are building this a little bit. There's a bunch of tools out there now that are popping up that are trying to help you navigate your network more efficiently using AI. So it's not necessarily automating that process, but it's helping to surface the right connection for you that you never would have really had the time to go analyze, the thousands of people that you've met in your lifetime to figure out what's the best pathway for me to get my goal achieved, right? So I'm very hopeful for that because I think that's going to just save people a lot of time and ultimately the faster people can get these connections to happen, like the faster everything moves forward and hopefully that increases the kind of average quality of life.
Yeah. What about prepping for like a fundraise in particular? Kind of relating this back to some of our audience, hopefully around founders listening to this. I'm starting a fundraise. Where should I start when I'm mapping out my own network?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for fundraising is that it's easy to forget, especially if you're an early, like a first-time founder, or you haven't raised capital in a while, that investors have a mandate to invest their money. So they have a problem, which is they need to find deals to invest in that are aligned with their thesis, that their LPs are expecting, that they think are going to meet their check boxes of what a good investment is. So they're looking for you just as much as you're looking for them. And so making yourself known that you are, raising money, and to an extent you can't really legally market that on social media or something, but making it clear to the people who are connectors in your network that you are raising money, even on its face, is a great place to start because, for example, for me personally, I know a lot of investors. I have lots of friends who are working in venture capital, who are angel investors. I've made angel investments myself. So if a friend reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Evan, I'm starting a fundraise. Do you know anyone that I could connect with?" I already have in my head like a whole map of different kinds of investors in different spaces. So you could think of it like Google, right? If you give me a great set of parameters, I'm going to give you a better result. And so not just asking me, "Hey, do you know anyone who's likes to invest," but being super specific, ideally sending a short deck or a couple of bullet points, like the sector you are raising in, how much you're raising, where you're based, some traction metrics, these kinds of things are really helpful because then my brain's like, okay, you're probably like pre-seed to seed. That discounts like all my Series A friends who invest in that, right? So you're kind of making it easier for people to help you, I think is a huge component.
Yeah. I think that's so true. Just to uh, kind of piggyback on that, when we talk about investor updates on our founder solution, I think like the more specific you can be with your ask, could be fundraising, could be like customers, right? Like the better. It's like, oh, do you know any um, enterprise companies that I can get intros to? It's like, well, that could literally
Right.
be anybody, right? It's like, oh, I need like VP of finance of CPG companies in North America that are doing this thing. It's like, ooh,
Yeah.
that elicits a very different type of response. So I love that.
Yeah,
Let's say,
and
yeah,
just to add to that real quick, like this might be kind of a hot take, but I think there's a fallacy that people have around wanting the request to be broad enough that it captures all the possible opportunity. So it's like,
yeah,
Mike, I don't want to give you too specific of a request because like what if you have the perfect investor for me, but because I told you I'm only doing this one specific thing, you don't make that intro. I get where that anxiety comes from, but I think what is way more common is to go too broad and then you don't really trigger the person's brain on anything. So it's like your example of, do you have any enterprise introductions you can make? It's like, yeah, I probably know 100 people, but my brain doesn't think of those 100 people when you ask me that. It thinks of no one actually. It's just
yeah.
like, nah, it
And you're
kind of
also
like
requiring
fakes
me
out.
to do the work too, right? You're like, okay, now I have to go do the
Yeah.
work and be like, okay, here are the people. It's like, just tell me. I mean, shit, we heard that about Micah at Boundary Group. Was like, that's one, one specific person or asset can kind of change and then unlock something. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. What about like tapping? So let's say I have raise capital now. I have investors who tout their platform and how we're going to help you navigate um, you in your company building and finding new hires and customers and future capital. um, how should I tap my investors network once I have raised capital right from them? Is it
Mm.
what are
Yeah.
best practices there? Like, I'm a first time founder and now I've raised capital. Should I be aggressive and proactive? Should I be passive? Like, how should I navigate that new relationship and tapping my investors networks?
Yeah, totally. I would say first start by getting permission. So,
Mm,
having a conversation live with each of your investors, ideally one on one, where you say, "Hey, I am growing the business. Appreciate your investment. I know you have a great network. We're going to be doing a lot of selling over the next 6 months or so. I'd love to be able to reach out with specific requests for introduction. Would that be something you're open to? And if I send you a request, can I kind of count on you to respond to it within like 24 or 48 hours?" And if that investor's like, you know what, I don't know if I have the bandwidth for that, like make it an easy thing to say no to because you don't want someone to overcommit and then and everybody ends up feeling bad later. But once you have that permission, if someone says yes, then when you reach out with that request, they're going to be framed that way. And it even creates a little bit of guilt because obviously everybody's busy and it's hard to fulfill any requests at all. And so you need to have that framing up front that they're already kind of primed to help you. And then there are some tools out there that can help you map your own network and the networks of your investors and help you kind of figure out who your investors know. You could use Getro for that. There's kind of a handful of other tools. But even using LinkedIn, if you're connected with someone, you can go typically, if the profile is not private, depending on the settings, most people have the setting open where you can go search the people that they're connected to. And some people don't even know you can do this, but if you and I are connected on LinkedIn, in most cases, like most people have the setting available where you can search their network. So take your top 5 prospects, go search, at the company and see if they actually know someone who works there. And if they do, then make the ask like super, super specific. And it's time intensive to do this, but you can also hire like a virtual assistant or have your team members support you if you don't have the bandwidth for it. But it increases the likelihood of conversion of the request by a ton. I mean, I don't know, I
mm,
have like a study about that, but in my experience, if
yeah.
you're making a specific request, like the odds that it's going to get a response are way, way higher.
Yeah, love that. I love that tactical know-how. So that all tracks. So you mentioned the LinkedIn hack there. Any other like lightweight systems or rituals founders can do to help keep my network warm throughout the year, even if I'm not raising, right? Like
Yeah.
I just want to, because it's like, oh man, I had a great connection with this person, and then it's been 18 months, and so now my chance to maybe go have an ask or leverage that network, the likelihood's gone down closer to zero, right? Because I just haven't maintained that relationship like Anything that
Yeah.
you see that works well to keep the network warm?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think any answer should be first kind of grounded in authenticity because I think a lot of the uh, automated strategies here can come off as very transactional and even a little uncomfortable. And I think what you're trying to do when building your network is you want to be top of mind, but you also want that person to be, when they think of you, it creates like a positive emotion, right? Like there's trust, there's like, oh yeah, like I'm inspired by this person, they have a good reputation. So you're thinking about not just being top of mind, but are you maintaining or ideally building the kind of emotional connection, trust, reputation, whatever you want to call it, with that person. So a couple tactical things. I think it's staying top of mind, posting occasionally on whatever platform gives you the most energy, and then using that platform to connect with as many people as possible. I think X and LinkedIn are probably the two that are the most common if you're in tech. Even though it can be a little bit cringy, I think it's worth it because it keeps people top of mind. Like in times when I've been posting more, I just noticed that people reach out to me more proactively and say, "Hey, I thought about you because I saw your post," right? And so it's not just about trying to become an influencer or something. It's like you are kind of influencing even maybe 2,000 people who are, or 200 people who are connected to you as well, and keeping yourself top of mind. Another thing that I'll do sometimes is if I have a great conversation with someone, I use a tool called Superhuman, which is an email client, but you can do this in Gmail too. I'll just set a boomerang on that email for a period of time, maybe 1 month out or 2 months out. So it'll come back into my inbox, and then maybe I'll just send a quick note and say, "Hey, I was thinking about you. You know, this is the thing that I've been thinking about. Hope you're doing well," just to kind of keep in touch. And again, I think that has to be authentic and it has to
Hmm.
work in whatever system you're using to reduce the friction as much as possible for you. But um, yeah, I think that can be a good way to kind of passively just remind yourself.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I want to wrap with kind of the last section here on really putting your network to use. Um, Maybe just to start, you recently wrote this kind of article. I saw, I think it was on Techstars, called and it's about self rejection. Can
Mm.
you explain like what that theme or thing is about and how it shows up in or for founders?
Yeah. Yeah. Self-rejection is that little voice that happens in your head that sometimes you don't even catch it because it's so quick, which is like, that's not going to work.
Mm,
That person's not going to respond to me. I probably don't deserve to. It's like any of that kind of negative framing that you tell yourself before you actually try a thing. So if you try a thing and you get rejected, then okay, you validated, this assumption, right? But I think what we oftentimes do is to protect ourselves from the emotional and physical feeling of being rejected, we just self-reject and then we kind of move on. And it's a common thing, right? That everyone does. But I think when you're a founder, you have a certain level of responsibility to push through that, and you can get support with that, and try to bring a lot of self-awareness to that because you're just constantly having to go out and get in front of people and sell all kinds of things, ideas, people, products, right? So it's a thing that I think the best founders either naturally don't do that or they really, really work on it. So yeah, I think about that a lot.
has it gotten easier or harder for you as your tenure of a founder? Like, you face
I
so much
mean,
rejection, did you become numb and it's not a thing, or it's like I've faced so much that it's become more of a thing?
I think that in a way the goalpost just moves.
Mm,
Like something that I would have found to be scary to reach out about or make a request on earlier in my career. Like I don't even, it doesn't faze me at all now. But there are totally still things that I think about where I'm like, oh, that feels edgy or crunchy, or I want to avoid a hard conversation there, or it's happening typically at this subtle level. But
mm.
if you can bring awareness to it, then you can kind of rationalize around it. So I think it's really more about developing more awareness of when that's happening. And I actually, my co-founder Maverick is an amazing resource for me on this because he's great at holding me accountable and also just being like a person that I can bring these kinds of things to and talk through it and not feel judged about it and whatever's coming up, and then you kind of like go back into the arena, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Do you? Um, I feel like early stage sponsors sometimes hesitate to ask for help to their peers, to their network.
Mm,
Like where is that coming from? Is it I'm scared to be
yeah.
vulnerable because I'm seeing all this amazing hype online, or where's that manifesting?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there is typically an insecurity around feeling like it's like there's an Ira Glass quote. It's like one of my favorite quotes from Ira Glass. It's kind of long, but it's basically about this idea that as a maker, as an artist, as a technician, you have good taste. And because of this good taste, it's made you want to go actually build a thing. But as you're building it, you're not, you don't have the practiced ability to build the thing that you envision, or maybe it's just not there yet. And you have good taste. And so you look at it and you're like, this isn't really that good. Right. And so you're kind of like judging it from that point of view. And so if you're projecting that onto the world, and imagining that someone else is viewing your thing and thinking like, oh, it's not that good, then it can feel kind of embarrassing to go reach out and ask someone, hey, look at this thing that's actually kind of vulnerable because I don't think it's that good yet, but I need help to make it better. Can you help me? And you don't know me, so like it's a quite a vulnerable thing. And I think probably what people underestimate when they're in that position is how energizing it can be to actually help, and how the people who are kind of further ahead, they were in your position before. They remember probably what it's like to be you. At least, maybe some people who are way, way later in their career, maybe they've lost their empathy, but usually they remember. And so if you can take your hard-won skills, bring them into someone else's life and make an impact, especially if the project is aligned with your values, it's very gratifying. And so it actually is a mutual transaction when sometimes it doesn't maybe feel that way.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, what about the founders becoming a node in their network and not just a taker? Maybe related to that, like how do you think about adding value, giving first, paying it forward? What does that look like in practice without expecting anything in return?
Yeah, I think some people are more natural at this than others, where they just kind of remember the details of their conversations with people. If you're someone like that, where this is intuitive, great. If you're not, then you can have a system to just write it down. But when you're talking to people, when you're having a sales call, when you're interviewing someone, when you're pitching an investor, you can always ask at the end of that call, by the way, like, what's your biggest problem right now? And like, if you could kind of wave a magic wand and solve this problem, like, what would that look like? Or like, what would be a great introduction for you right now? And just kind of keep a passive note of that. And if you're out there talking to lots of people, you start to almost become this little mini marketplace maker, right? Where you meet someone who has a problem, you meet someone else who has a problem, and they actually fit, and you can make that introduction. And I think that is a super powerful way to build your network, because people really remember if you help them close a deal, you help them hire someone, you help them get an investor. And it's something, it's very easy, it's free, and you can do that no matter what, right? Even if you don't have a product to
Yeah,
sell, you can be helping
yeah,
people meet each other.
yeah. Um, what one two last questions, kind of one on network and then one for you personally, Evan. For founders listening right now, like what's one practical takeaway I can use to activate my network this week? Like maybe it's something I've ignored for a while. I feel inspired. What's like one thing I can do this week to activate my network?
Yeah, I would say that it, it's maybe cheesy depending on who you are and how you think about LinkedIn, but I tend to use LinkedIn all the time nowadays, and I recommend using it, however cringy it can feel. I think like if I was trying to answer this question for myself, what I would do is I would get like a pen and a piece of paper, and I would just make a list of my top 5 to 10 biggest problems. And I would think about, okay, what is like the name or the title of a person who would be able to help me solve this problem? And I would go to my LinkedIn and I would open up my connections and I would just start searching for those job titles. And what I end up noticing when I do something like this is that actually there's people in my network who are in roles that can be extremely helpful to me that I haven't been able to pay attention to, right? You can't keep track of every single person in your network and the jobs they have and how they're moving around. So oftentimes, like, we actually have the solution in our network, but we just haven't thought about it like
Hmm.
that. So just bringing some awareness of like, who do I know And if it's not someone I know, who do I know that I could ask who might know someone like this? And just be super, super specific and targeted on one and make a few requests. And I think it comes back in many cases.
Yeah, I love that. Uh, yeah, I've seen your LinkedIn, your post. It seems like just you're killing it out there on the streets on LinkedIn, man. It's like, uh, it's been interesting to see like the migration, at least for me, going to like LinkedIn from X. It just feels like there's more
Hmm.
start activity happening on LinkedIn now, or maybe that's just me as a consumer of like not migrating. But there's a lot of great stuff on there. There's a lot of cringy stuff too on there.
Yeah,
So
I feel like I feel like you trade like the kind of despicable chaos on X for like the nerdy cringe on LinkedIn. It's
yeah,
like you gotta kind of like pick your battle.
if I see you shirtless in a bathing suit posting about your
Yeah,
network,
it's
Evan,
definitely gonna be on
I'll
X.
call you. I'll call you.
Yeah, I will be
uh,
lost. I will be very lost if that happens. Yeah.
one last question that we're asking every single guest this season. Uh, what's one professional relationship that has changed your life?
Um, in I forget what year it was. Maybe it was like 2019. Maybe even earlier than that. Maverick, my co-founder, and I had met a guy named John Baird who became our executive coach. And it was a moment where we were really having challenges seeing eye to eye, and we were aware that it was wasting time and just creating so much frustration, but we didn't really know how to break through it. And we got to meet John, and we did a couple sessions with him. I mean, maybe like once a month for a couple months, but he really made a big impact on our relationship, and it has lasted. And we're still in touch with John. And he's a phenomenal executive coach. He's built his whole career coaching some pretty brilliant people. But yeah, very grateful to John. I think the number one takeaway, maybe, or one big takeaway that we learned in that moment was just whenever you feel this like head to head thing is happening, it's like, what is the strategy of the business in this moment, and how can we like turn from looking at each other toward the problem and like solve this problem together. So depersonalizing it, but making it more about like what is the problem to be solved, has been a really beautiful strategy for us.
Shout out to John. That's awesome.
Shout out to John, great man.
Love it. Evan, thank you so much for spending your time with us today, sharing your. I love all of the tactical things you share with us. I geek out on that stuff, and we'll take some of that away. But more of the high level things too about self rejection, and I think that's so great for founders to hear. So thanks for sharing your story and your wisdom with us here today at Visible.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the time.
All right, talk to you soon, John.